When I found out my son had moved my money into his wife's account, the world went quiet. Not peaceful quiet, not the kind that calms you, the kind that sucks the air out of the room, leaving you with nothing but the sound of your own heartbeat. I stared at the numbers on my phone. All those years of saving, gone in seconds. I tried to blink it away, thinking maybe I had made a mistake. But I hadn't. It was real. He did it. My son. The same boy whose first steps I filmed on a borrowed camera. The boy I fed before I ever fed myself. The boy I worked 3 jobs for, while my back screamed and my feet bled. And now he had stolen from me. I sat there, frozen, while my coffee went cold. The sunlight crept across the floor, slow and golden, but I couldn't feel its warmth. My house suddenly felt like a stranger's place. Every photo on the wall stared back at me like a witness to my own humiliation. For a long time, I didn't move. I just breathed, in, out, trying to keep myself from falling apart. That money wasn't just money. It was my life, folded into numbers. It was my husband's last wish before he passed. Make sure you're taken care of, baby. It was the rent I'd paid on time for 40 years. The meals I'd skipped to send my son to college. The vacations I never took, the dresses I never bought. Every sacrifice had a price, and I'd paid it in full, and yet he took it like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. I remember whispering to myself, why? Why would he do that to me? But deep down, I already knew the answer, because I had taught him that I would always forgive him. Because I had shown him that I would always fix what he broke. Because I had been too good for too long. Love can make you blind, but motherhood can make you foolish. I'd confused giving with loving, and in that confusion, I had created a man who believed he could take without consequence. I leaned back in my chair and let the truth burn through me. My son didn't see me as his mother anymore. He saw me as a resource, a wallet with wrinkles, a living, breathing safety net. He thought I was weak, too old to understand, too soft to fight back. He was wrong. I looked at my hands, dark, wrinkled, strong hands that had scrubbed floors, braided hair, held dying loved ones, and built a home from nothing. Those hands had built his life. Now they would rebuild mine. I didn't cry that morning. I didn't curse him. I just made myself a new cup of coffee. Strong, black, bitter. Exactly how I felt inside. As I drank, I started to remember things. The way he'd asked me for access to my bank app just to help pay bills. The way his wife smiled that polite plastic smile every time I said no to something. The way they stopped visiting unless they needed something. It had all been leading to this. They hadn't stolen on impulse. They had planned it together, and that thought, that burned deeper than any betrayal I had ever felt. I walked to the mirror in my hallway and looked at myself for a long time. The woman staring back wasn't fragile. She wasn't naive. She wasn't broken. She was just done being the one who gave everything. Done being the one who was easy to deceive. Done being the woman people underestimated because of her age. And that was the moment I decided. I wouldn't go to the police. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't scream. I'd do something much more dangerous, I would think. I would plan. And I would take back what was mine, on my terms. He thought moving my money was the end of the story. But what he didn't know is that it was only the beginning of mine. It was 2 days later when the phone rang. I almost didn't answer. Unknown number. But something in my chest told me to pick it up. Mrs. Carter? The voice was polite, professional. The kind of tone bankers use when they're about to ruin your peace. This is Mr. Lewis from First Community Bank. I just wanted to confirm the joint authorization on your account. My heart dropped. Joint authorization? I repeated slowly. Yes, ma'am. The one added last week under your son's name. And his wife's. For a moment I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. I didn't authorize anything, I said finally, each word cutting the air like glass. There was silence on the other end. Then the man cleared his throat. Oh, that's strange, ma'am. The request was made from your email and verified by phone. My blood ran cold. My son had used my phone. The day he said he'd update my apps because I was having trouble logging in. That's when he did it. He hadn't been helping me. He'd been setting the trap. I could hear my own pulse pounding in my ears. Every heartbeat felt like a hammer. I thanked the banker, hung up the phone, and sat there in my kitchen, staring at nothing. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something, to break something. But instead, I folded my hands in my lap and started to think. If they were bold enough to do this, it meant one thing. They believed I was powerless. They thought age had made me weak, that kindness had made me blind, that I wouldn't understand what they'd done until it was too late. They didn't know the kind of woman I am. I grew up in a world that didn't give me anything. I built everything I have with sweat and prayer. I've buried a husband, raised a child alone, paid bills that didn't care if I was tired or sad. If I survived all that, I could survive this, but I wasn't going to survive it quietly. I got up from the table and opened the drawer where I kept all my papers, receipts, statements, every transfer. Every deposit, I laid them out one by one, like puzzle pieces. I wanted to see the whole picture, to know exactly how deep the hole went. $86,000, that was the total. All the money I'd saved since my husband passed. Every cent now under their control. I could feel my hands trembling, but my mind was sharper than ever. For the first time in years, I felt awake, completely awake. I went to the mirror again, the same one in the hallway. I looked into my own eyes. They weren't the eyes of a victim. They were the eyes of a woman remembering who she really was. "All right," I whispered. "You want to play games? Let's play." That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up reading, learning about fraud, about legal rights, about power of attorney and how to revoke it. By sunrise, I knew exactly what to do. They had used my name to take what was mine, so I would use their greed to take it back. When the morning light touched the window, I picked up the phone and called Mr. Lewis again. "Sir," I said calmly, "I'd like to schedule a meeting to review my accounts in person. And please, make sure no one else has access to them." "No one," he hesitated. "Of course, Mrs. Carter, I'll prepare the forms." As I hung up, I smiled for the first time in days. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind a soldier wears before battle, quiet, focused, certain. They thought they could outsmart me, but they were about to learn something my son had clearly forgotten. I may be old, but I am not done, and I never ever lose what's mine without a fight. The next morning I woke up before the sun. The house was still and quiet, like it was holding its breath with me. For a long time I just sat at the edge of my bed, staring at the floor, my bare feet on the cold wood. The kind of silence that follows betrayal is different. It's not peace. It's the sound of your soul rearranging itself. I took a long shower, not to wash away the anger. That doesn't wash off. But to remind myself that I still belong to me. That my body, my time, my choices were still mine. When I got dressed, I didn't put on something fancy. Just a clean black dress, my wedding ring, and the same gold earrings I wore to my husband's funeral. They made me feel like he was walking beside me, like he was saying, "Go get what's yours, baby." Outside, the air was cold and sharp, the kind that wakes you up even if you're dead tired. I walked slowly to the bus stop, clutching my purse close. Every step felt like a decision. Every breath, a reminder that I was no one's fool. The bus ride was long. People talked, laughed, checked their phones. I just looked out the window, watching the city pass by. Every block, every corner held a piece of my story. The diner where I used to eat after late shifts, the store where I bought my son's first bike, the church where I buried my husband. It all came back, and with it, something fierce started to rise inside me. When I walked into the bank, the cold air conditioning hit my face like judgment. Everything smelled like metal and disinfectant, the scent of other people's control. Behind the glass counters, young faces smiled those polite, empty smiles. Smiles that didn't know what it meant to fight for every dollar you have. "Good morning, Mrs. Carter," said Mr. Lewis, standing up as soon as he saw me. He was a middle-aged man, kind eyes, tired face. We'd known each other for years. He'd watched my balance rise and fall, always steady, always quiet. He offered me a seat. "Would you like some water?" "No, thank you," I said softly. "I'm not here to be comforted." He sat down slowly. "I understand you wanted to review your accounts?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, and I want to cancel every authorization tied to my name. Every joint access, every shared code, everything." He nodded, fingers already flying over the keyboard. "Of course, but..." May I ask, is everything all right? I met his eyes. For a moment, I thought I would break down. But then something steadier rose inside me. No, Mr. Lewis, I said. Everything is not all right. My son has been stealing from me. His eyes widened. He didn't speak for a few seconds. When he did, his voice was gentle. I'm so sorry, ma'am. I'll make sure no one touches your accounts again. You have my word. I could feel tears threatening, but I held them back. I wasn't there to cry. I was there to reclaim. As he printed the documents, I looked around the room. I noticed the little details I'd never seen before. The clicking pens, the low hum of the air vent, the quiet shuffle of paper. This was the same place I had stood years ago, opening an account for my son when he got his first job. Back then I was proud. Now I was learning what pride costs when it isn't respected. Mr. Lewis slid a folder across the desk. Sign here to remove all other names from your accounts, and here to request a new card and password. No one else will have access. I took the pen, and my hand shook just a little. Not from fear, from power, from the weight of finally saying enough. Each signature felt like a cut in the cord that had tied me down for years. When I finished, I exhaled for what felt like the first time all week. Mr. Lewis leaned forward. If you don't mind me saying, Mrs. Carter, I've seen a lot of things in this office, but what your family did, that's not love. That's abuse. Don't let them make you doubt yourself. I looked at him and smiled faintly. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I stopped doubting myself this morning. When I left the bank, the sunlight hit me full in the face. It was brighter than before, almost blinding. I walked slowly, my purse heavier with new documents, but my heart lighter than it had been in years. As I crossed the street, I whispered to myself, they took my money thinking I'd crumble, but they just woke up the woman I used to be. That night, I sat by the window, a cup of tea in my hand, watching the lights flicker across the neighborhood. I didn't know what my next step would be yet, but I knew one thing for sure. They had started a war they didn't understand, and I was done losing. That evening, I made soup. The kind my husband used to love, thick, warm, full of garlic and memories. For the first time in weeks, the house felt calm. Not happy, just calm. But peace doesn't last long when people smell money. It started with a knock. Soft at first, then harder. 3 sharp bangs that made the spoons in my drawer tremble. I froze. Through the window, I saw their car. Black sedan. Shiny. The one I helped them buy last summer. I didn't move. The knocking came again, louder. Mom! Open up! His voice. The same voice that once called me Mama when he was scared of the dark. Now it sounded like a command. I walked slowly to the door. Not to open it, just to stand close enough to hear every word. Mom, we need to talk. Behind him, I could hear her voice, sweet and sharp like broken glass. Renee, we know what you did. The bank called us. I stayed quiet. They didn't deserve my words yet. After a minute, I heard keys rattling. He still had a copy. My heart tightened. I had forgotten to change the locks. The door opened. They walked in like they owned the place, like thieves walking into a museum of everything they'd already stolen. My son looked nervous. She looked angry. I looked calm. What's going on? He asked, pretending confusion. The bank said you canceled the transfers. Why would you do that without talking to us? Because it's my money, I said quietly. He blinked. For a second, I could see the boy he used to be, surprised, almost ashamed. Then his wife stepped in. Renee, you're overreacting. We're family. The money was safer with us. We just wanted to make sure you're taken care of. I laughed. It wasn't a joyful laugh. It was the kind of laugh that comes from a wound that has finally scarred over. Taken care of? I repeated slowly. You took my savings. Without permission. That's not taking care of me. That's robbing me, her smile faltered. Don't say that, she hissed. It makes us look like villains. I took a step closer. You don't need me to make you look like villains. You did that all by yourselves. My son ran a hand through his hair. Mom, come on. You're not thinking straight. You've been alone too long. Maybe you're confused. There it was, the word. Confused. The same word people use when they want to erase your voice. I stared at him for a long time. Let me make something clear, I said. I may be old, I may be tired, but I'm not confused. He opened his mouth, but I didn't let him speak. For years I paid your bills, covered your debts, helped you when you couldn't help yourself. I thought I was doing it out of love, but it turns out I was paying rent to stay in my own family. Silence, heavy, electric. Even the refrigerator stopped humming. His wife crossed her arms. "So what now? You're just cutting us off? After everything we've done for you?" I smiled sadly. "Everything you've done for me? You mean the lies? The guilt? The phone calls that only came when you needed something?" My son's voice cracked. "Mom, don't do this. We can fix it. I'll put the money back, okay? We'll handle it as a family." "It's not about the money anymore," I said. "It's about respect, and that's something you can't transfer back into my account." He looked at me, lost. Maybe he realized for the first time that I wasn't the same woman who used to say yes to everything. "Get out," I said softly. They both froze. "What? You heard me?" "Get out of my house," his wife scoffed. "You can't talk to us like that." "We're your family." I walked to the door and opened it wide. The night air swept in, cool and final. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't treat you like a bank. Whatever you are to me now, it's not family. My son stood there, torn between shame and defiance. "Mom, if you push us away, don't expect us to come back when you need help." I looked him dead in the eye. "I've been alone before, baby, and I survived just fine." He hesitated. Then he turned and walked out. She followed, muttering something I didn't care to hear. When the door closed, I locked it. Then I slid the chain across. Then I leaned my forehead against the wood and breathed. Not from exhaustion, but relief. It was the first time in my life I had ever told them no. And the quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was sacred. I looked around my living room, still warm from the soup, and whispered to myself, "They thought they broke me. But this is the sound of me coming back." The morning after they stormed into my house, I woke up to sunlight crawling across the floor. I hadn't slept much. My mind kept replaying every word, every insult, every drop of venom hidden behind that word, family. But when I opened my eyes, something had shifted. For the first time in years, I didn't feel afraid. I felt awake, fully, painfully awake. I got up, made coffee, strong and black, the way I like my truth, and sat at the table where my husband used to read the newspaper. His chair was still there, empty but solid. Sometimes I swear I can still hear him in the silence. "Don't let them take your peace, baby," he'd say. And that morning, I decided I wouldn't. I pulled out every document I had, bank statements, tax records, savings certificates, old notes from the years when I could barely make ends meet. Each paper was proof of the life I'd built with my own hands, and I wasn't going to let anyone rewrite that story. By 9 o'clock, I was dressed and ready. This time, not for church, not for groceries, but for war. I went back to the bank. Not the small branch near my house. No, I went downtown to the big one. The one with the tall glass doors and security guards at the front. If my son wanted to play grown-up games, I was going to play them on a grown-up level. The same Mr. Lewis greeted me, surprised. "Mrs. Carter, you're back again?" "Yes," I said calmly. "I need to talk to your legal department." He blinked. "Of course. May I ask what this is regarding?" "It's regarding my future," I said. He didn't ask again. They led me into a small conference room with cold air and a glass of water that tasted like nothing. A young woman with red glasses came in, carrying a laptop. She introduced herself as Ms. Green, Financial Protection Advisor. Polite smile, professional tone. She had no idea she was about to meet the strongest woman she'd ever advise. "Mrs. Carter, I understand there's been some unauthorized activity on your accounts?" "Yes," I said. "By my son and his wife." Her pen stopped midair. "Oh, I'm so sorry. That must be very difficult." "Difficult is raising a child alone for 35 years, I said quietly. "This is just math." For a second, her expression softened. Then she got to work. We went over every transfer, every login, every email verification. She confirmed what I already knew. My son had full access for months. He'd been quietly moving small amounts before the final hit. "He's been testing the water," she murmured. "Yes," I replied, "and now it's boiling." She explained how I could freeze my accounts, revoke digital authorizations, and report financial abuse. The phrase financial abuse hit me like a revelation. It gave a name to something I'd been living for years. Not just theft, manipulation, dependence, control. When she asked if I wanted to press charges, I paused. I thought about my son's face. The same face that used to sleep on my shoulder when he was sick. The same boy I once prayed over. Part of me wanted to forgive him, but forgiveness without consequence isn't love. It's surrender. Not yet, I said. But I want everything documented. Every transfer, every call, every name. She nodded. We'll prepare a legal report. You'll have full evidence in case they try again. By the time I left the bank, the sun was high and hot. I felt it on my face, not as punishment but as light, like the world was finally showing me what had always been there. I stopped by a locksmith on my way home. The young man behind the counter smiled. "Morning, ma'am. Need new keys?" "Yes," I said. "To my house and to my life." He laughed politely, not understanding what I meant, but I did. Every lock I changed, every password I reset, was a piece of myself coming back home. That evening, I wrote in my notebook, something I hadn't done in years. 3 sentences. Simple, clear, final. They took my money. But they didn't take my mind, and I'm not done yet. Then I closed the book and smiled to myself. Because for the first time in decades, I wasn't thinking about who might take care of me when I get old. I was thinking about how to take care of myself, right now. It came just 2 days later. I was watering my plants when the phone rang. Unknown number again, but this time I knew exactly who it was. Manipulators don't disappear. They circle back when the well runs dry. I let it ring twice before I picked up. Hello? A pause. Then that soft, fake sweetness I'd heard so many times before. "Renee. It's me, Sarah, my daughter-in-law." Her voice trembled just enough to sound human, but I could hear it, the performance behind every syllable. "Oh," I said calmly. "I wasn't expecting your call." "Well, we've been worried about you," she said, drawing out the words like honey hiding poison. "Max told me you've been acting strange lately. You're not answering your phone. You canceled the transfers. We're just concerned. Concerned. That word again. They used it like perfume, to cover the stink of greed. I've been busy," I said. "Busy?" she repeated, nervous laugh. "Doing what?" "Living," I answered. Silence. She hadn't expected that. "Listen, Renee," she started again, her tone softening. "I know things got complicated. We all said things we didn't mean, but we're family. We can fix this," I smiled. It wasn't the warm kind. It was the smile you give someone who's already buried the knife. "Fix what exactly?" I asked. "The misunderstanding," she said quickly. "The money wasn't stolen. It was just rearranged. We were trying to manage things better for you. You know, to keep it safe." I almost laughed out loud. They had stolen from me and still thought they could rewrite the story. But I wanted to hear how far she'd go. "Safe?" I said slowly. "In your account?" Another pause. Then her tone cracked. "Well, technically yes, but we were always planning to return it. You know how bad things have been with Max's job lately?" Ah, there it was. The confession wrapped in justification. The same song, same lyrics. "You should have called me earlier," I said softly. Hope flickered in her voice. "So, you understand?" "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said. "You needed the money. You took it, and you thought I'd be too weak to fight back. Renee, that's not fair." "Fair?" I interrupted. "I worked 40 years for that money. You've been married to my son for 5. You don't even know what fair means." Her voice turned defensive, desperate. "You don't get it. We're drowning. We have bills, rent, and I had a husband who died young," I said coldly. "I had nights where I couldn't afford heat. I didn't steal to survive. I worked." Silence again, but I could hear her breathing, fast, angry, afraid. Then she changed her tone. "Renee, please, don't make this ugly. Let's just sit down, talk, have dinner. Max misses you. We both do. Let's be a family again." The manipulation was so thick I could almost taste it. So I gave her what she wanted, or at least what she thought she wanted. "Dinner sounds lovely," I said calmly. Her relief came instantly. "Really?" "Yes," I said. "Come over Friday night. Bring Max. We'll have a proper conversation." "Oh, Renee, thank you. You don't know how much this means." "I do," I interrupted. Then I hung up before she could say another word. For a moment, I just stood there, holding the phone, feeling the quiet hum of victory under my skin. I wasn't going to cook dinner for them. I wasn't going to serve forgiveness on a silver plate. I was setting the stage. They wanted a performance? I'd give them one. But this time, I would write the script. That night, I sat by the window, listening to the soft rustle of leaves outside. The world felt different, not kinder, but clearer. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of confrontation. I was prepared for it, because I finally understood something my younger self never could. Kindness without boundaries isn't love. It's surrender disguised as care, and I was done surrendering. Friday was coming, and they had no idea what kind of woman they were walking into. Friday came faster than I expected. All week I kept the house spotless. Not for them, for me. Every clean surface was a message. This is my home, my space, my rules. I set the table like I used to when my husband was alive. 2 plates, silver cutlery, candles. Everything looked beautiful, but the food stayed cold. Because this wasn't a meal, it was a lesson. At exactly 7 o'clock, I heard the car pull up. Their laughter floated through the air before they even reached the porch. The same fake joy people use before a funeral. They knocked once, then let themselves in, as if nothing had changed, as if the locks hadn't been replaced just yesterday. I let them struggle for a moment. Then I opened the door, slow and deliberate. "Evening," I said, smiling just enough to confuse them. Sarah's eyes darted around. "Oh, you look wonderful, Renee. The house looks lovely." "Yes," I said, "it does." I finally had time to clean up. After all the mess, she forced a laugh. My son didn't. He looked tense, like a man about to walk into court. We sat at the table. I poured them water, not wine. Silence filled the room like smoke. "So," I said finally, "what did you want to talk about?" Sarah jumped in first. "Renee, we just wanted to clear the air." Things got heated. We all said things we regret. I nodded slowly. "Is that right?" She leaned forward, voice soft and rehearsed. "Family shouldn't fight over money. It's not worth it." I looked her straight in the eye. "You're right," I said. "It's not about the money. It's about the theft." My son sighed loudly. "Mom, please, can we not do this? You've been acting paranoid." "Paranoid?" I repeated. I set my glass down carefully. "You took my savings. You lied to my face. You broke into my account. If I were paranoid, I'd be wrong. But I'm not wrong, am I?" No one spoke. Even the ticking clock on the wall seemed to hold its breath. Sarah finally broke the silence. "Renee, we didn't mean to hurt you. We thought we were helping." "You've been under a lot of stress," I interrupted, my voice calm but sharp. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "That tone," I said. "That voice people use when they talk to children or crazy people." "I am neither," Sarah blinked. My son rubbed his forehead, frustrated. "Mom, we can fix this. Just stop making it worse." "Worse?" I said softly. "You think I'm making this worse?" "No, sweetheart. I'm just shining a light on the truth. You two have been hiding in the dark for too long." I stood up, slow and steady. They watched me, confused. Then I walked to the counter, picked up a small envelope, and placed it on the table between us. "What's this?" Sarah asked. "Documentation," I said. "Every transfer, every password, every unauthorized access, and every time you both used my account as if I were already dead." Their faces drained of color. My son's mouth opened, but no words came. I kept talking. I went to the bank. I talked to legal advisors. Everything is now frozen, protected, and monitored. And if either of you try to move a single cent again, it'll be reported as elder financial abuse, a federal crime. My son slammed his hand on the table. "Mom, are you threatening us?" I didn't flinch. "I'm warning you." "There's a difference." Sarah's voice turned shrill. "This is insane. We're your family." I looked at her calmly. "Then act like it." For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator. Finally, I pushed my chair back and stood. "I think we're done here," I said. The tone wasn't angry. It was final. Sarah stood up too, trembling. "You can't just cut us off, Renee. We have responsibilities. We planned things based on your help." I smiled gently. "Then it's time you start planning based on your own lives." They left in silence, slamming the door behind them. I didn't move for a while. I just stood there, staring at the empty chairs. Then I blew out the candles. One by one, the light faded, and I whispered, "They thought tonight was a dinner, but it was their last supper." The silence after that dinner didn't last long. Manipulative people can't stand silence. It starves them. They need chaos to breathe. It started 3 days later. A knock on the door. Not gentle, firm, official. When I opened it, a man in a gray suit stood there holding a folder. "Mrs. Carter?" "Yes." "I'm Mr. Fisher. I'm an attorney representing your son and daughter-in-law. The words hung in the air like poison. I stepped aside slowly. He walked in without asking, like they always do. Your children are concerned about your well-being, he said, sitting down as if it were his own house. They've asked me to assess your situation. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I smiled. That's interesting, I said, because I don't recall inviting strangers to assess my sanity in my living room. He cleared his throat, trying to stay composed. They've reported sudden behavioral changes. Financial paranoia, isolation. You've cut communication with your family, revoked joint accounts. I stopped him with one raised hand. Let me guess. You think I'm confused? His lips parted, but I didn't let him speak. I've paid bills for 40 years, managed a mortgage, taxes, medical insurance, retirement funds. I raised a child alone after my husband died. And only now that I decided to stop paying their rent, I've suddenly become incompetent? He hesitated. Ma'am, it's not personal. They're worried you might be exploited by outsiders. Outsiders? I repeated. My son and his wife stole from me, lied to me, manipulated me. If that's your definition of family, I'd rather be exploited by strangers. He tried to hand me a folder. Mrs. Carter, this is just a power of attorney form. A simple legal transition so your children can manage your finances while you rest. I didn't even look at it. I threw it straight into the trash. The only transition happening here, I said, is you leaving my house. Before he could answer, I walked to the door and opened it wide. Good night, Mr. Fisher. His fake politeness cracked. This isn't over, Mrs. Carter. They have rights. So do I said. And mine don't depend on your signature. He left, muttering under his breath. The door closed behind him with a sound that felt like victory. I stood there, breathing hard but steady. This was no longer about money. This was about control, about how far they would go to get it. That evening, I poured myself a glass of wine, the first one I'd had in years. I watched the liquid swirl and thought, so this is how they fight. The next morning, the phone started ringing again. Different numbers, different voices. Neighbors asking strange questions. One even asked, Renee, are you okay? They said you've been forgetting things. Forgetting things. That was their next move. Smear my mind. I didn't argue. I just smiled and said, thank you for checking on me. Then I called someone who actually knew what she was doing. Mr. Lewis from the bank gave me a name. Mr. Weber, an elder rights attorney. Reputation spotless. Voice calm, sharp as a blade. When I met him the next day, I told him everything. The theft, the threats, the attorney visit. He listened quietly, taking notes. Then he looked at me and said, Mrs. Carter, what they're doing is called elder financial abuse. It's a federal offense, and trying to declare you incompetent without proof is another form of coercion. For a second, I just sat there, stunned. All this time, I thought I was losing my mind. But I wasn't crazy. I was being hunted. Mr. Weber leaned forward. We're going to document everything. Every transfer, every message, every visit. If they try to take this to court, we'll be ready. For the first time in weeks, I felt something new, relief, because someone finally said out loud what I already knew in my bones. I wasn't the problem. They were. When I left his office, the sky had turned gray. Rain clouds gathered, heavy and low. I walked home slowly, letting the wind hit my face. It didn't feel cold. It felt cleansing. By the time I got home, I was drenched, but free. I changed into dry clothes, made tea, and sat by the window. Outside, thunder rolled. I whispered to myself, they wanted to call me crazy, but I've never been more sane. The day after the storm, the air felt clean again. Cold, sharp, like the world had pressed reset. I woke up early, before sunrise, made tea instead of coffee this time, green, light, calm. I stood by the window and watched the sky shift from blue to gold. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about what had been taken. I was thinking about what was left, and there was a lot left. Me. That morning, I decided to rebuild everything, but this time from the inside out. First thing, I went to Mr. Weber's office again. He smiled when he saw me. Ready? He asked. More than ready, I said. We spent hours filing documents, legal protections, asset freezes, notification letters to every bank and credit bureau. By the time we were done, my financial life was a fortress. No one could touch it again without going through fire first. Then we moved on to something deeper. A will. Not because I was dying, but because I was done letting others decide what I left behind. I rewrote everything. Names changed, trusts redirected. Every line was a message to my future and a warning to my past. When Mr. Weber finished typing, he said, "You know, Mrs. Carter, most people do this out of fear. You're doing it out of clarity." I smiled. Fear was the old me, I said. She doesn't live here anymore. After that, I went home and called a locksmith again, not just to change the locks, to install cameras, motion sensors. Every corner of the house now had eyes, mine. The young technician, maybe 25, tried to make conversation. "You live alone, ma'am?" "Yes," I said. He smiled. "You seem strong. My grandma says living alone keeps her tough." I looked at him. She's right. But it's not living alone that makes you tough. It's realizing you're safer that way. When he left, I sat in the living room, surrounded by quiet, but it wasn't the same silence as before. This one was soft, warm, peaceful. It didn't crush me. It held me. I walked through every room like I was meeting my home for the first time. The photos on the wall looked different now, not as memories of what I lost, but reminders of what I survived. In the kitchen, I found the old notebook where I used to write grocery lists. I tore out the used pages and wrote a new list, not of things to buy, but of promises to myself. Promise 1. No one touches my peace again. Promise 2. No one decides my worth but me. Promise 3. I am not alone. I am complete. I read them out loud until they felt true. That night, I cooked dinner for one, a simple meal, rice, beans, roasted chicken. It smelled like comfort. It tasted like freedom. While I ate, I heard thunder again in the distance, faint, but steady, and I realized something beautiful. The storm hadn't destroyed me. It had washed me clean. Later, I sat in my chair with a blanket and looked at the camera feed on my phone. Every corner of my house safe. Every light glowing softly. For the first time in years, I didn't double-check the locks. I didn't worry about the phone ringing. Didn't dread the next visit. Because the woman sitting there wasn't the same woman they stole from. She was someone new, someone sharper, someone peaceful. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, "They tried to break me, but all they did was teach me how to build." And as the night wrapped around me like a promise, I finally slept, not from exhaustion, but from peace I had earned. Weeks passed. The house that once felt like a battlefield began to feel like home again. Quiet, steady, alive. I started waking up without fear. No more checking my phone for strange transfers. No more looking through curtains to see if someone was parked outside. The ghosts of worry were still there, but they stayed in the corners now, afraid of me. One morning, I opened the curtains wide. Sunlight poured in like a long-lost friend. It landed on the table, the floor, my hands, and I smiled. Because for the first time in years, I wanted to go outside. I put on my best dress, not for anyone, but for myself, blue with white flowers. The one I'd stopped wearing because it felt too bright for my age. Not anymore. I had survived betrayal. I had every right to shine. When I stepped outside, the air felt new, different. Not because the world had changed, but because I had. I walked to the park a few blocks away, the same park where I used to take my son when he was little. Back then, I'd sit on the same bench every Saturday while he played, and now, decades later, I sat on that same bench. But this time, the little boy wasn't there, and I didn't cry. I smiled, because that bench wasn't a memory anymore. It was proof. Proof that I'd been strong long before I even knew I was. While I was sitting there, A familiar voice called my name. Renee, is that you? I turned and saw a woman I hadn't seen in almost 10 years, Clara. We used to work together at the clinic before I retired. Her smile was warm, the kind that melts through years like they're nothing. We hugged. She smelled like lavender and life. I've missed you, she said. I thought you moved away. No, I said. I just got lost for a while. We sat and talked for hours, about everything and nothing, about people we knew, things we'd survived, the absurd beauty of still being here. For the first time, I laughed, really laughed, not polite laughter, not nervous laughter, the kind that comes from the belly, the kind that shakes off dust from the soul. When the sun started to set, Clara touched my hand. You look lighter, she said. I nodded. I am. For the first time in decades, I feel like I belong to myself again. That night, I walked home with a quiet joy I hadn't felt in years. The streets were the same, but I saw them differently now. Every house, every light, every tree felt like part of my story. When I got home, I made tea and called my old neighbor, Gloria. She was surprised. Renee girl, where have you been hiding? I smiled into the phone. Building myself, I said. She laughed. Well, it's about time you built something for you. We talked for hours about movies, memories, recipes, everything that had nothing to do with pain. And when I hung up, I realized how healing normal conversations can be when they're real. That night, I wrote another page in my notebook. Freedom isn't the absence of people. It's the presence of peace. And I finally found mine. Then I went to bed. The window open, the night air soft on my face. The world outside didn't scare me anymore because I had built a new one inside me. It started with a letter, a simple envelope slipped under my door. No name on the front, just the words, for you. Inside was a flyer. Community Center, Financial Literacy Workshop for Women over 50. I almost laughed when I saw it. A year ago I would have thrown it away, but now it felt like a sign. That Saturday, I walked into that small, crowded room with a notebook in my hand and a heart, full of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Direction. Most of the women there looked like me, older, tired. Faces marked by years of giving. Too much and being thanked too little. But their eyes still had fire. The woman leading the session was young, sharp, confident. She spoke fast, clicking through slides about credit, scams, joint accounts, and digital safety. Half the women nodded, half looked lost, and I realized something. They weren't stupid. They were just like me, taught to trust instead of question, taught to love even when it hurt. When the class ended, I walked up to the front. Thank you, I told the instructor. She smiled. Are you going to join our mentorship program? I paused. No, I said softly. I'm going to start one. She laughed until she saw that I wasn't joking. 2 weeks later, I was back at that same center. But this time, I stood at the front of the room. No slides, no microphone, just my voice. Good evening, I said. My name is Renee. I'm 68 years old. And not too long ago, my own son stole every dollar I had. Gasps, murmurs, eyes wide. But I kept going. I'm not here to talk about pain, I said. I'm here to talk about what happens after pain. About what you can build when no one believes you can stand again. I told them everything. How it started with kindness. How manipulation hides behind smiles. How ignorance and love can look the same if you're not careful. But I also told them what I learned. How to secure an account. How to revoke access. How to trust your instincts. How to never let guilt make you silent. By the time I finished, some of the women were crying. One of them stood up and said, "They did the same thing to me." Another whispered, "I thought I was the only one." That night, something shifted in that little room. Pain became power, fear became clarity, and for the first time I felt truly useful again. The next month, more women came, then more. Soon, the center was full every Saturday. We called it the Circle. We weren't victims anymore. We were witnesses. We were teachers. We were protectors of our own stories. One evening, after everyone left, I sat alone in the quiet hall. The light from the window fell across the table where I'd been sitting. And I thought about all the women who'd come through that door, broken, scared, doubting themselves, leaving stronger, louder, free. I smiled, because for the first time, I wasn't just surviving what happened to me. I was rewriting it. What my son took was money. What I found was meaning, and that's worth far more. Before I left, I wrote one last note on the whiteboard for the next group. You are not crazy. You are not weak. And you are not alone. Then I turned off the lights and whispered to the empty room. They tried to silence me. Now my story speaks for others. It had been 6 months since I'd last heard from him. 6 months of silence, peace, and purpose. 6 months where I learned to live without the sound of guilt knocking at my door. Then one afternoon, it happened. A knock. Soft, hesitant. Not the kind that demands entry, the kind that asks for permission. I knew that rhythm. I didn't need to look through the window to know who it was. My heart didn't race this time. It didn't ache. It just settled, like it was ready for whatever came next. When I opened the door, he looked smaller, not in size, in presence. The confidence, the arrogance, the noise that used to fill the room before he even spoke. It was gone. He stood there in a plain shirt, eyes tired, shoulders heavy. "Hi, Mom," he said quietly. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Two people who shared blood, but not trust. Two strangers connected by memories neither of us could escape. "Can I come in?" he asked. I nodded. Not because I forgave him, because I wasn't afraid anymore. He stepped inside slowly, looking around. "The house looks different." "It's mine again," I said. He sat down at the table, the same one where we'd eaten, argued, and where he once lied without blinking. Now he couldn't even meet my eyes. "I heard about what you've been doing," he said. "The group. The women. The news did a piece on you last week?" I raised an eyebrow. "You watched it?" He nodded. "I did. I didn't recognize you at first. You looked strong." I smiled faintly. "I am." He took a deep breath. "Mom, I need to say something." I stayed silent. "Sometimes silence is the only language that tells the truth." "I was wrong," he said. His voice cracked. "I thought I was helping. I thought I knew better. But the truth is, I just didn't want to face how much I'd failed." He rubbed his hands together, nervous. "When Dad died, you became this wall I couldn't climb. You handled everything. You didn't need me, and I wanted to feel important again. So I took control of the only thing I thought I could, your money." I watched him closely. The tears in his eyes were real, but pain alone doesn't fix betrayal. "You didn't want to help me," I said softly. "You wanted to control me. There's a difference." He nodded. "I know. I see that now. I don't know how to make it right." I leaned back in my chair, studying him. "You can't," I said simply. "You can't undo what's been done. But you can learn from it, and maybe one day earn back what you broke." He looked down, ashamed. "I've been going to therapy," he said. "Trying to fix things." Sarah left. She said she doesn't want to live with someone she can't trust. I didn't say anything. Sometimes silence is the only kind of mercy left. He reached into his bag and pulled out a checkbook. "I saved what I could. I want to pay you back." I raised a hand. "No," I said. "I don't want the money." He looked confused. "Then what do you want?" I looked him in the eye, steady and calm. "I want you to live with the weight of what you did and use it to become a better man. Not for me, for yourself." He nodded slowly, tears spilling now. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "You don't," I said gently. "But forgiveness isn't something you deserve. It's something you grow into." We sat in silence for a long time. The clock ticked. The sun shifted across the floor. Before he left, he stood at the door, hand on the knob. "Mom? Yes? Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "No, I hate what you did. But I still love who you were. The boy you used to be. The man you still might become. If you choose to." He swallowed hard. "Do you think there's hope for me?" I smiled softly. "There's always hope. But this time, it's not my job to carry it for you." He nodded, eyes red, and walked out into the fading light. I watched him go, not with anger, but with peace. When the door closed, I whispered to myself, he finally came home. But I'm the one who found my way back. Then I turned off the light and sat by the window again, the same place where everything had once fallen apart. Now the place where I finally felt whole. The days grew quieter after he left again. Not empty, just quiet in a way that felt earned. Like the house itself was breathing easier. Like the walls had finally stopped listening for trouble. I started moving slower, not because of age, but because I could. For years I'd rushed through everything. Through grief, through betrayal, through life itself. Always trying to fix, to prove, to hold things together. Now I didn't rush. I let the morning light stay on my face a little longer. I let the kettle whistle without hurrying to turn it off. I sat in silence and let the sound of my own breathing remind me that I was still here. Sometimes I'd walk around the garden and talk to my husband. Not out loud, just in my mind. I'd tell him about the women I was helping, about the lessons I'd learned, about the man our son had become, and the man he still could be. And in the wind, I could almost hear him say, "You did good, baby. You finally chose yourself." That sentence stayed with me, because that's what freedom really is, not walking away from others, but walking back toward yourself. I used to think freedom meant not needing anyone. Now I understand. It means not depending on anyone to define your worth. It's standing in a room alone and knowing you are enough. People think aging is about losing things, beauty, time, chances. But I've learned something else. Aging is about shedding. The noise, the fear, the weight of pretending. Until what's left is the truth of who you are, and the truth is, I am not a woman broken by what happened. I am a woman shaped by it. I'm not the same mother or the same wife or the same believer I once was. But I am finally the woman I was meant to be all along. Some nights I still dream about my son as a little boy. Running in the park, calling my name, holding my hand. When I wake, I don't cry anymore. I just smile, because even if I lost him for a while, the love I gave wasn't wasted. Love never is. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting people back in. It means letting the pain go out. I forgave him the day I realized I didn't need him to be sorry for me to heal. My healing was mine to claim, and I claimed it. Now, when I look at myself in the mirror, I don't see the woman they took advantage of. I see the one who took her life back, the one who rebuilt her heart brick by brick, the one who learned that peace isn't given, it's chosen. Sometimes people ask me, "Renee, after everything, are you happy?" And I tell them the truth. Happiness isn't what I was chasing. Peace is, and peace is finally mine. At night, I open the window and let the cool air in. The world outside is still loud, still messy, still unfair. But inside my home, inside my soul, there's quiet, there's calm, there's freedom, and I whisper to the darkness, after all they took, I still have everything that matters. It came on a Tuesday, a plain white envelope, no return address, just my name, written in handwriting I hadn't seen in months, shaky, familiar, human. For a long time, I didn't open it. I just sat at the table, turning it over in my hands, feeling the weight of it, because sometimes it's not the paper that's heavy, it's the memories sealed inside. Finally, I slid my finger under the flap and pulled the letter out. 2 pages, folded neatly. I took a breath and began to read. "Dear Mom, I don't know how to start this. Everything I've tried to say in person never came out right. So I'm writing instead. I've been in therapy. I've been working. I've been learning things I should have learned a long time ago. Things about responsibility, about shame, about love that doesn't take more than it gives. I've had to look at myself in ways I didn't want to. And I don't like what I see, but I'm trying to change it. Slowly. Honestly. You were right, Mom. I didn't steal because I needed money. I stole because I wanted control. I wanted to feel like I mattered again. And I hurt the one person who made me matter in the first place. I can't take back what I did. I can't fix it with words, but I want you to know I finally understand the difference between guilt and remorse. Guilt makes you hide. Remorse makes you grow. You taught me how to be strong, even when I didn't deserve your lessons. You taught me what love costs. I just wish I hadn't learned it by breaking yours. If you ever decide to forgive me, I'll be grateful. But if you can't, I'll understand. You owe me nothing. You've already given me everything, love, Max." I sat there for a long time, the letter trembling in my hands. Every word felt like a thread pulling me back through time. The sound of his baby laugh, the nights I stayed up when he was sick, the pride I felt the day he graduated. and the silence that followed the betrayal. Tears came, not like before, not angry or desperate, just soft, quiet tears that carried the last of the hurt out of me. I folded the letter carefully, pressed it to my chest, and whispered, "I see you now, my boy." Finally, I see you. Then I walked to my old wooden chest, the one where I kept family photos. I opened it and placed the letter inside, not as a wound, but as a reminder. I didn't call him. I didn't write back, not yet. Some forgiveness takes time to ripen. It needs silence to grow roots. But that night, as I sat by the window with a cup of tea, I felt something new. A lightness I hadn't known in years. Forgiveness wasn't letting him off the hook. It was letting myself go free. I looked out at the stars and whispered, "I forgive you. Not because you asked, but because I deserve peace." And in that moment, the night felt softer, like the world itself had exhaled with me. It took me weeks to write back, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted to make sure I said it from peace, not pain. I kept his letter on my nightstand. Sometimes I'd read it again before bed, not to reopen the wound, but to remind myself that even broken things can grow roots again. One quiet morning, when the air felt gentle and the light soft, I made tea, sat at my table, and took out a clean sheet of paper. My hands didn't shake this time. They were steady, certain. Then I began to write. "Dear Max, I read your letter. I read it more than once, and each time it felt different. The first time, I cried. The second, I remembered. The third, I forgave. You asked if I could ever forgive you. The truth is, I already have. Not because what you did was small, but because carrying the pain was too heavy for me to keep holding. You see, forgiveness isn't a gift I give to others. It's one I give to myself. It's how I stop being the woman you hurt and start being the woman I am now. I'm proud of you for facing yourself. That takes courage. But remember, remorse is just the beginning. Change is the proof. If you want redemption, don't chase my approval. Build your own peace, live in truth, help others, and never take from someone what you didn't earn. I'm not angry anymore, Max. I'm not waiting for apologies or payback or promises. I'm just living, and I hope one day, when you've learned to live with the same peace, you'll visit, not to fix the past, but to share who you've become. Until then, know this: you are still my son. And I still believe that love can outgrow even the deepest wounds. Take care of your heart, Max. It's time you learn to guard it the way I learned to guard mine. With love, Mom. When I finished, I didn't seal it right away. I read it one last time. The words didn't ache anymore. They felt like release, like air after rain. I put the letter in an envelope, wrote his name on the front, and walked it to the mailbox myself. The street was quiet. The world felt still. I slid the letter in and whispered, "This is the last thing I'll ever owe you." Then I turned and walked home, not lighter, not heavier, just free. That night, I didn't dream of loss. I dreamed of water, calm, endless, forgiving. And when I woke, I realized something simple and beautiful. You can forgive someone without ever opening your door again. You just have to open your heart and close the story. Time has a strange way of healing you when you stop asking it to hurry. The days pass quietly now. No more lawyers, no more fear, just the soft rhythm of a life rebuilt. Sometimes I still think about everything that happened, the betrayal, the anger, the nights I cried in silence, wondering where I went wrong. But I don't ask that question anymore. Because life doesn't always give you answers. It gives you mirrors. And what I see in mine now is peace. I'm not the woman they stole from. I'm not the woman they underestimated. I'm the woman who learned to stand again, who learned that power isn't loud, it's steady. That strength isn't in fighting harder, it's in choosing when to stop. I used to think forgiveness meant letting people back in. Now I know it means letting pain go out. Forgiveness isn't a door you open for someone else. It's the lock you remove from your own heart. My son once asked if I still believed in love, and I told him, love is the reason I survived. Because love doesn't mean staying. It means growing, even when it hurts. Every scar on my body, every wrinkle on my skin, every silence I learned to sit in, they all tell the same story. I made it, and I didn't make it by being perfect or strong or unbreakable. I made it because I refused to stay broken. People think healing is about forgetting, but it's not. Healing is remembering without bleeding. So if you're listening to me now, if someone took something from you, lied to you, made you doubt your own worth, listen carefully. You can lose money. You can lose trust. You can even lose people you thought would never hurt you. But don't you ever lose yourself. You are not what they did to you. You are what you chose to become after. And me? I chose peace. I chose truth. I chose freedom. So I'll leave you with this, not as advice, but as a question. When the people you love betray you, when the world takes what you built with your own hands, when the pain feels too deep to forgive, what will you do? Will you break? Or will you begin again? Because in the end, that's the only choice that ever really matters. And you, what would you do in my place?